everyone. My name is Mann, and I'm the wife of Bob Mann. Well, his second wife, and much younger, I might add. Maybe you've heard of him? No? Bob was the first black player for the Detroit Lions in 1948, and he was good. Oh, he had his struggles, mostly for recognition because of his color in his day. My Bob broke a lot of color barriers, and I am so proud of him. Bob was born right here in New Bern in 1924. He went to J.T. Barber High School. He talked a lot about his time here in New Bern. His family was poor, even though his dad was a well-known doctor in the black community. New Bern was a small, segregated town back then. It wasn't as bad as other towns farther south, but it wasn't good. You couldn't eat here and you couldn't go there. Blacks were on one side, whites were on one side, and there wasn't much intermingling. He said he never did play with whites. That was until he went to Michigan. You see, Bob's dad wanted him to be a doctor and a football player. So he sent him to the University of Michigan to study medicine. There, Bob played football as a walk-on, one of only 2 black players on the team. That was until his college career was interrupted in 1944 for a couple years in the Navy. There was a war going on, you know. Now, I mentioned that Bob was picked up by the Detroit Lions in 1948. He always said that the NFL players treated him well enough, even though they did have their struggles. There was this one time they went to play against New Orleans, and Bob had to stay in a private home because no hotel would host him. Well, the funny thing about that story is that the lady of the house was the finest cook around, and he dined on the best gumbo, devil crabs, and fried oysters that he had ever eaten. Delicious. Bob's first year with the Lions, he led the team in receptions, and he was second amongst the rookies in receiving yards. And I was his biggest fan. I kept my own stats. In fact, there was this one game when I had to correct the statistician because he said that Bob caught 8 passes when it was actually 9 passes, and it was a new Lions record for a single game. Then, in 1949, Bob led the NFL in receiving yards, and he was second in the NFL in receptions. And then the Lions told him that he had to take a pay cut. But he refused, and so they traded him to the New York Yanks. Now, even though Bob came to the Yanks with a stellar record, they cut him from the team 3 weeks later. He was so disappointed and he thought that his football career was over. But then he was picked up by the Green Bay Packers. He was the first black player there too. And the next year he was their leading receiver. And a couple years later, he caught 3 touchdown passes in one game against Philadelphia. All the fans roared. Bob stayed with the Green Bay Packers until 1954 when a crippling injury ended his football career for good. But they remember my Bob because in 1988, they inducted him into the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame. After football, Bob went back to college and became a criminal defense lawyer. And he practiced law in Detroit for 30 years, right up into his 80s. He was such a gracious man, and he tried to help every kid he could, encouraging them to stay in school and helping them to turn their lives around. Even though Bob fought color barriers his entire career, he was always positive and such a joy to be around. He always said, "I've had a lot of blessings, and you will too if you believe in yourself and follow your dreams. So how about you? Are you working hard and following your dreams? I hope so. Thank you for allowing me to share my Bible with you. I hope that you have a great evening.